Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has been a lot of things. It started as a radio series for on British radio, a radio drama. It became a book. There was a TV show. There was a movie. There was a text computer game. Comic books. I'm sure there was a play. It's taken a lot of twists. I want to talk about the book. When I was a kid, I was not completely clear that this was like a fictional novel at first. I thought that maybe someone actually had written kind of like a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I remember being unclear about how to read the book. Eventually I got around to it because anyone who read as much science fiction as I did, sooner or later would be told, how hilarious Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is. And it's the kind of thing that even now, plenty of people who haven't really taken it in any real form are probably at least familiar with a couple of the jokes, like about the meaning of the universe being 42, or the don't panic, or don't the dolphins being smarter and leaving Earth before it's destroyed. But when I recently reread the books, there are five of them. The first two are mostly based off elements that appeared in the radio series, and then the later ones are much, in my opinion, much more haphazard. They use the characters, but it's really unclear kind of what is being gotten at, except the general tone of the story. Um, so I'm mostly just going to talk about the first two. The first two were called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. And the tone of these books, I think, is responsible for their success, because it is a committed, clear, consistent tone, so that even though the books themselves are maybe not that great as judged by other standards, like having well-developed characters or well-written plots, or even just kind of like common sense based thinking, they're going to last because they so consistently express this tone of really comic despair. There is no hope anywhere in the Hitchhiker's universe. The In the very first few chapters of the first book, the Earth is destroyed, and the disaster is kind of always waiting. There is no meaning anywhere. There's no one who can really help. Occasionally, the characters run into some fluke that allows them to survive for another day, and there is no sense that there's certainly no God. There's certainly no real solidarity or sense that conscious life is really much of a good thing. I was deeply struck by just how little is how little works in this universe. It's a universe where things really, really don't work, and where the main thing you can count on is people being selfish and destructive and greedy and bureaucratic and officious. Um, Time and time again, these large forces like the Vogons, the aliens who destroyed the Earth, and don't feel bad about it at all. They're just doing their job, and it turns out to be for nothing. Or Gag Halfront, who is a psychiatrist to one of the main characters, and needs to have him wiped out because he knows something that might threaten the psychiatric profession as a whole. This is like, it's a pretty dark picture. It's a really dark picture of the universe. People don't really get along. Love is more or less absent, or treated as kind of just a bad joke, just kind of a chance to set up more suffering and heartache for yourself. So in this universe where the Earth is destroyed for nothing, and the only person, only like one one or two people are saved from the entire planet and everything else is destroyed, where this not only is a horrible crime that wipes out all of humanity and all of the life on Earth, it turns out to also disrupt this massive million-year-long project to discover the meaning of life that was just about to be completed before the thing blew up. And this sense of being utterly helpless in the face of the larger forces around you. Why keep going? What's worth doing? So there are these moments in the books, for people who maybe are not familiar with them, the, the main characters in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the main one is Arthur Dent. He's the one that people are probably most supposed to empathize with. He's the human who is rescued from the destruction of Earth by a friend of his who is actually an alien who looks human, named Ford Prefect. Ford Prefect works as a roving freelance writer for a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is the reference book that Ford and Arthur continually turn to, as well as the reader turn to when they need to understand more about the universe around them. The Ford thus is in the position, when he's explaining to Arthur how the Earth is gone, of offering some sort of authoritative position on what's worth doing now. And Ford, Arthur's like, what do we do? What am I supposed to do? Or the Earth is gone. What, like, everything's gone. What the hell am I supposed to do? What am I here for? He's like a newborn baby, right? Ford says, oh, the universe is a neat place. You stick around with me, we'll have some laughs. Like, that's it. Like we'll take it easy. We'll have a few drinks. It'll be fun. This is Ford's consistent attitude all the way through the books. If Ford represents an attitude on the universe, and since he's closely associated with the Guide, which is considered like the authoritative reference on the universe in the universe, then the attitude is like, have some fun. The Hitchhiker's Guide itself, the book, is also presented as the authority on what's going on. And the Hitchhiker's Guide generally is similar to Ford's, most notably represented by the fact that on the cover of the book are printed the words "Don't panic." In the Douglas Adams universe, that's like that's your major moral or ethical duty. First, don't panic. After that, kind of like Ford says, the Guide is generally hedonistic. It celebrates drinking and love in the form of like sex, and it has a sense of humor about how things go. Like it tells a lot of stories about sort of ironical discoveries and unlikely strange events. So there's a certain amount of, you can enjoy how weird everything is. That's one thing you can do with your life in the Hitchhiker's Guide universe. You can drink, you can have a good time, you can get laid, you can enjoy how strange and weird everything is. That's kind of it. And that's pretty much what Arthur and Ford do. They do get into trouble, and there are like antagonists everywhere, but there's one of the later books, I think it's Life, the Universe, and Everything, a character who Ford and Arthur generally see as benign, is telling them about a threat to the universe that this one group represents, and how he would like their help to oppose them. And Ford, in what's gotta be one of the more unusual interactions in threat to the universe, Ford says there's no point. There's no point in trying to fight these guys. And the other guy, whose name is Slider Bartfast, is like, what? Why? The universe? And Ford's like, look, we're not serious people. I'm paraphrasing. He says, but he's like, we're not serious people. We're eccentrics. We're weirdos. We're layabouts. We're dilettantes. And what that means is we don't care enough about things to like win out or to impose our will on events. These guys are fanatics, the way you're describing them to me. They're nuts. They care. They'll die for this. That means that sooner or later they're gonna win. And Slider Bartfast is taken aback. But it's hard to say that Ford is wrong. It's just so blatant. It's so blatant a rejection of immersing yourselves in a greater good because it's hopeless fundamentally. It just won't work. Even to like save the universe, it is not worth trying if you're the wrong type of people. No one like committedly who's like devoted to the greater good or to improving the world, which the world of the Hitchhiker's Guide certainly has much that could be improved. Someone could try to stop the Vogons or set up a better galactic government or restore the Earth. It's science fiction, right? They could do anything. That just isn't a thing in the Hitchhiker's universe. You've got some eccentric people who do some fun things now and then. You've got greedy giant companies. You've got some religious type fanatics. You've got a corrupt, ignorant government that takes its orders from a solipsist, fundamentally. The other source of possible authority is Ford's cousin, who's another major character, Zaphod Beeblebrox. He's very funny. He's kind of got a kind of piratical, eccentric, I don't even know what I'm doing, babe, kind of wink and a nod kind of thing. In the movie version, he was played really well by the actor Sam Rockwell. And Zaphod is like acts without really knowing why. At some point, he had a part of his brain locked away from himself, so he gets these intuitions to do things without knowing why, which prevents him from ever really having to articulate any value or sense of what worth doing. He mostly just criticizes Arthur for being stupid, even though Arthur's not stupid. But Zaphod is kind of like, you know, arrogant, and he's got a huge ego, and he just enjoys putting people down around him. Not to an insane degree, but um, reasonably often. So he's not really much help. He doesn't have a vision for how life should go. He's more on the Ford school. It's just that his ego is bigger. So instead of just slobbing around and having some laughs, he comes up with more grandiose projects to celebrate himself. But it's not really much different. It's kind of like the guy who would just wants to enjoy a party, and Zaphod is maybe the guy who wants to organize the party and get the biggest bands and so on. But still, basically, like, let's have a party. Um, so that leaves us to the final character who makes a lot of statements about what's worth doing and what isn't, and that's Marvin. Marvin is a robot character. He was one of the more popular characters from the radio series, so he keeps showing up in the books. He's like one of those robots that can, operate, I guess, for millions and millions and millions of years, and he's incredibly depressed. In fact, that's usually the first thing he says, like, a thing you ought to know. I'm feeling very depressed. He's like the eternal pessimist. Everything is going to go wrong, always, and he feels horrible about it, and life sucks. It just does. He often is in the position of being able to help, but he's too depressed to care. Even with these projects where he could have some unique insight, he just doesn't care. In fact, at one point, he tells them that he knows the meaning of life. He can see it hidden in Arthur's mind and has been able to since the beginning of the story, but no one ever asked him, and so he's not going to tell them. And then before they can actually ask him, events rip them all apart. But that's kind of like the level of bleak, pointless despair that undergirds all of the humor. It's like the darkest of comedy. It's hidden by the fact that there are so many funny stories and good jokes and bits of ridiculous, um, you know, repartee or science fictional crazy, but fundamentally this is one of the darkest universes. It's Lovecraftian. It's just covered in glitz. Uh, like just the fundamental pointlessness of being alive. So that when they get to the final book and we got to the end, I was like, well, yeah, of course. What else could you do? Of course, that has to be the end. On the way there, it's kind of messy, and it doesn't mean that there aren't moments that the characters enjoy, but it's almost always presented as just a coincidence, just a temporary upswing of the general, I'm feeling very depressed and everything sucks attitude that Marvin represents. Marvin's pretty much on point the whole time, along with the events of the books themselves, which sort of represent life as basically a lot of pointless challenges, most of which you overcome until you just can't anymore. So it's they're fun. I wouldn't say they're like super well written according to many forms of fiction, but they really express this attitude, this comedy against a science fictional wall of despair, that um, that I don't think anyone else maybe has done quite as well, and so they will probably continue to be read and enjoyed even after their sort of pop cultural reputation fades a bit. Uh, yeah, it's a weird thing to revisit and find this stuff you thought was so funny, and then see what undergirds it and realize that it's like a deep sense of just existential emptiness. Maybe that's common to other forms of comedy, but with this one, it really struck me hard. So yeah, let's all have a laugh, I guess, while the world is pummeled out of existence by aliens for no reason.